There is a magic just before dawn. And you can see it now. And that magic happens just as one gets up from sleep. The sky is dark, but there are little stirrings outside, little stirrings of life. And there's a light that plays a trick on the mind, because you're almost sure that you can see into the darkness. That's the dawn, just beginning to happen. And you know, when I was growing up in Oma, if someone died, there was a wake. And the wake took place over 3 days and 2 nights. Because it was part of the culture, and still is part of the culture, the understanding that the soul needed that time to acclimatise to having left the human body. So there was a stillness and a warmth and very deep love. That was the atmosphere at wakes at this particular time, just before the dawn, because people would stay up all night. The body was not left alone, and there was a sense of celebration. So people recounted tales of the person whose body was there, and stories of all kinds of events. A lot of supernatural stories, because it was a way of coming to terms with what lay beyond this mortal realm. But always at this time, just before the dawn, there was this beautiful peacefulness and anticipation and optimism. And I often attended these wakes because my grandmother, along with my great aunt, her sister, were often called upon to lay out the body. And laying out the body, of course, is done by undertakers these days. So it's again become that sort of disconnected thing, you know. But laying out the body was a very sacred ritual, because you had to wash the body down, and then you had to dress the body and make sure that the body of the loved one looked its best in the coffin. So there was this beautiful ritual involved that involved usually the whole family, but it was the woman laying out the body who would be in the room with the corpse. And things were brought to them, so bowls of water and soap and towels and fresh clothes, and so the family would be participating in that way, but not in direct contact, because again it was seen as a sacred ritual and best conducted by those who were a little bit apart from the loved one who had died. I suppose not unlike hospitals or hospices or places that deal in this, deeply moving way with people who need to have that level of care. And inevitably, one feels better when one is being tended by someone who is a little bit removed and not directly linked. So the sky had gone this beautiful shade of pink, and now of course it's settling down, and there's life sounds being heard. But there continues to be this beautiful stillness. So there I was in the kitchen, just sat by the table, having my coffee, looking out the window, both the windows, and just watching the light beyond the window go from a navy blue to a lighter blue to a sort of a misty white, and then into this beautiful bright pink glow. And it was then that I began thinking about fond memories of this time of the year, and this particular time, that time just before dawn, because it's an enchanting time, it's a magical time, and it was often remarked upon. I remember this from attending wakes as an older child and a young woman, teenager. It was often remarked upon that the time when the soul left the body was often just before the dawn. It was as though it was accepted that there was a weakness in the chain at that time. There was a weakness. There was maybe not a weakness, but a sort of a bend in time where it was easy to push through at that point and to make that transition. And I loved that idea that there was, that within the time constraints that we live within, that there were little points at which we could access the other world, or we could access the forward trail, the forward path of our own personal journeys, where we could push through and go on. So, based on my own experiences growing up, I became horrified upon entering the adult world, and especially the world outside where I grew up, because I went to London when I was 17. I became horrified at the way others perceived this. This whole part of the human journey, of the human experience and beyond. And indeed, over recent years, I've become aware that there is this darkness wrapping around it all that's been contrived by writers and contrived by filmmakers and media producers. You know, it's that Hollywood effect that I often refer to. It's where all this is turned into something of a horror show. So it's taking that very base fear that we all have as humans and making that the dominant experience, whereas in fact it has nothing to do with our lives. It undermines everything that is part of the human experience. It focuses on such a minuscule part of what is the human experience. So it kind of leaves us unable to deal with everyday life. And this brings me round now to a comment which crops up every now and again, not too often thankfully, but every now and again I get the comment, "Are you not frightened living on your own? Are you not scared living on your own? It's as though living on my own makes me vulnerable." Isn't that a strange thing to say? Isn't that a strange thing to ponder on? There's my little robin friend back again, look. The short answer is no. I don't experience fear. Why would I experience fear living my life? And then that area of thought brings me to probably the main reason why I don't experience fear. And I've spoken about this now and again. I don't bang on about it, but I think it's relevant now to say that I left religion and all aspects of religion behind me quite a few years ago. This has been part of my Built in a Cottage journey and my experience, and how I have evolved through being in close contact with Mother Earth. And it was upon leaving all those fears, because religion is very much inculcated with fear. I was brought up as a Roman Catholic, so I know what that fear is like. You know, the absolute terror for a woman who gives birth and the baby dies before it can be baptised. To be told that the soul of that little baby will spend its time in limbo, a place of darkness and coldness and nothingness. That's fear. But I know that to be untrue now. I know a lot of things to be untrue. The cycle of life holds no fear. To live in close proximity with Mother Earth holds no fear. And yes, there are people now who are living on the edge of great wildernesses who would fear bears and wolves. But to live close to bears and wolves is to infringe upon their territory, surely. I see little birds up around that nest. I think it's been used by little birds. Although it was crows that built it. So here we now have the dawn. The night has passed almost silently into day. The birds are beginning to stir. The air is very still. And there's a promise of a beautiful day. Blessings to you all.